What is going on with the gaming industry? Why do games cost so much to make now? Why do they cost so much in terms of monetization? Why do they cost so much to buy? What is going on? What is happening with the state of gaming? That's what I've been thinking about for a while. And Charlie MoistCr1TiKaL just uploaded a video talking about it. So I thought it'd be a cool vehicle to also spew out my own ridiculous thoughts and opinions on what's going on with the whole gaming industry, because there's some good and there's some bad, but let's see what we got here.
Good afternoon, my fellow gamers. As all of you know,
hey, that's us.
I am one of you. I am an avid enjoyer of gaming. It's been a huge part of my life for my entire life. It's in my veins. It's in my blood. It's embedded deep in my DNA. My body isn't powered by a heart. It's powered by another graphics card. It's a 4090 in here that's keeping this flesh mech suit online.
It's powered by a graphics card? I feel like it's gonna be like a power supply or something,
like Tony Stark, but nerdier. Anyway, I feel as though I'm the only one qualified to give you the State of Gaming address for 2024.
Which he is. He's the only one qualified. No one else is. Especially not me. God, definitely not me.
Now, I've seen a lot of groaning and moaning, a lot of whining and complaining, a bunch of hoo-wee and hoo-ha and yee-haw about gaming.
He's right. There's been a lot of that going around.
The industry is dying. It's this festering wound. It needs, needs a huge change, this and that.
It's definitely not dying. Maybe it needs a change, because there's a lot of AAA games coming out now that they're just not good, man. They're so bad, and there's so much money being spent on them. What are they doing? Who is in charge of these budgets? Why won't they just give the money to us instead? Milk is so expensive now.
And while I agree with some of the sentiment, I actually think there are signs that the industry is going in a better direction overall. And I'll explain what I mean, but I want to start with something obvious. A lot of the $70 games we've been getting recently are just terrible.
Yeah, that's not even an argument. Now, they say they have to charge more because games cost more to make, but the games cost more to make because people want to spend more money making them. So they're like, oh, we need the better graphics, so we need the bigger set pieces, we need the more cutscenes. When there's so many good games that don't cost a lot to make. I mean, the ones that are really good and they're AAA games and they're made really well and they're super high budget when they come out, that's great. But you're risking so much. As a business, you're risking so much on your one game. Like your Starfields and your Spider-Man 2s. Spider-Man 2 cost $315 million to make. And that's unsustainable. That honestly sounds ridiculous. Although it did seem to make a profit, so maybe it's not completely unsustainable. That's a ridiculous amount of money to spend making just one game. Considering it could flop, it could come out to controversy, it could come out to you have to post a Twitter apology because you made Gollum by accident.
Not even worth playing, definitely not worth paying $70 for, such as
like Sea of Thieves,
Suicide Squad, and most recently, the first
Oh no, sorry, not Sea of Thieves. Not Sea of Thieves. Skull and Bones, which is, like he says, the first quadruple A game.
Triple A game, according to Ubisoft, Skull and Bones. Suicide Squad has flopped. Its player count has plummeted to under 1,000 players on Steam. And
damn, it dropped by 85%. It didn't even start that high to begin with either. You've got massive companies releasing these games that no one cares about and no one wants to play because everyone wants to make a live service. Everyone wants the magical money tree. Come on, baby. We gotta suck everything out of the consumer. Those live service games, you seen that Fortnite recently? You saw that Destiny? They can just suck money out. Even the Fallout 76 still has an active player base of people that will just buy the monetized items over and over again, and you can just suck so much money out of one person. You get so much value. As long as you get those big whales, then those live service games, they're gonna make so much money. But now everyone wants to make a live service game. They cost a lot to make because they're really big in terms of online hardware and the servers, and you have to have a lot of content, air quotes, in order to make it work. But now no one wants to play them because there's too many. There's too many games that are trying to fish all of your time. They want everything from you. They want to take your money. They want to take all of your time. Everyone wants to be World of Warcraft in 2024.
And this is a live service game. This isn't just one of those like single player games where you expect a massive drop off. This is one of those things that's supposed to live on for a long time that gets people hooked like heroin.
I'm gonna assume that the service for this game will be shut down next year.
But the only thing that got them hooked on was the idea of better games, because that shit is miserable. So that game has been largely a failure, and now Skull and Bones seems to be following suit, which is Ubisoft's latest super stinker.
Oh, this is okay, $70 game. It's not worth $70 for the game. I've seen so many clips of this. I've seen a clip of this where you're supposed to play as a pirate, right? So you'd think the boarding gameplay would be insane. It's supposed to be a branch off of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where everyone was like, oh my god, being a pirate is so fun. And Ubisoft was like, all right, bet, let me just spend 11 years making Skull and Bones, but it's gonna be so good. And how does the boarding gameplay work in this game? What's the incredible ideas they come up with? Jumping onto another ship, swinging on ropes, brandishing your rapiers, and just slicing through the enemy crew. No, you don't do any of that. You don't do any of that. You click the board button, and the other ship blows up, and that's it. You did it. Congratulations. That's the gameplay. Did you enjoy it? Here, give me more $70, please. It's just not fun. It defeats the entire point of being a pirate.
Which is a ship combat game without boarding. So it takes out the most fun part about being a pirate, the boarding, and reduces it to just being a cutscene. Quadruple A my ass.
I don't know. The most fun part of being a pirate might be the sea shanties. Assassin's Creed Black Flag had some great sea shanties.
Unless all of those A's stand for different adjectives for how bad it is. Abominable, awful, abysmal, ass.
Abomasnow.
Like, it's so stupid to me how this game is out there right now in its beta or whatever for $70 when it doesn't even have...
Wait, it's out in beta for $70? No, that can't be right. You can't sell a beta for $70. There's no way. Well, to be fair, they're quite confident in the video game. You can play for up to 8 hours on PC by selecting your platform here. Wait, you can... Oh, it's the trial version. Right, so you don't have to pay for that. Try the game for free. They're pretty confident in the game. They're allowing people to play for 8 hours without paying. That's pretty confident. I actually have to give them a big ups for that. Whether or not the rest of the game is like boring or not that good, allowing people to play for 8 hours, maybe just to get them hooked on it, and maybe it'll convert into sales better. But I mean, that's a pretty good trial period, to be honest. But the problem with Ubisoft games, at least I think now, is they're all so much the same. They're so pretty, and that's it. They're pretty. That's it. I hope you didn't want some gameplay with their pretty, because you are looking at a painting. $70 painting. It looks really good, though.
Boarding. Fucking Assassin's Creed Black Flag a decade ago has better ship combat and a lot more fun experience of being a pirate. It's crazy. I will not be playing Skull and Bones. I want to make it clear. I've only watched the streamers play it as well as the reviews on it, and I think it is in an inexcusably bad state. This is just blatant garbage that's being...
I wonder if it's really glitchy or it's just not
put
fun
out
at
here
all.
For a quick payday and a big infusion of cash. I don't foresee them ever actually making this game good. I'll go ahead and put it on record here. We can check back in on this in 2 years if Skull and Bones happens to be the next biggest game on the planet. That's amazing. But
there has been so many savings of games, like the Outer... No, not the Outer Worlds. The space game. The one we fly around. No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky was saved, and now it's actually genuinely good, apparently now. And there's been a few, but most games that go this way, they die out, and you never think about them ever again. Like Anthem. That was supposed to be a big live service game, huge for BioWare. Does anyone care about Anthem now? No, not really.
But I just don't see that happening, especially not with Ubisoft at the helm. It looks so painfully mediocre at best. The best compliment I've seen anyone give Skull and Bones is that it's mediocre. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Paying $70 for mediocrity and doing it with a smile on your face? Because I can't. And you shouldn't accept it either.
And you shouldn't, when there's so many good games out there. You could play Slay the Spire and Disco Elysium for probably half the price that you'd buy Skull and Bones for. You could go back and you could buy all of these really great games in the past. You could buy Disco Elysium, and maybe you could buy Baldur's Gate. You could buy Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is so good. It's really good. Please, dude, it's one of my favorite games.
And this is where I get into the positive news. Where a lot of these games have increased their price and decreased their quality.
And also added microtransactions, baby, because $70 wasn't enough. We have to double dip. We have to triple dip. We have to quintuple dip in all of it. Back when microtransactions first were born in Oblivion with horse armor, everyone was aghast. How could they? Add a micro payment just for horse armor? This is an insult. How dare they? They got lambasted, they got embarrassed, they got absolutely destroyed on the internet. Now it's just, oh, well, yeah, I mean, you have to, right? I mean, the video games are so expensive to make. But do they have to be? Do they have to be so expensive to make? What? Do they need massive budgets? Some of the best games that come out don't have massive budgets. Do you think Hades had a quintuple $billion budget? No, of course not.
The gap in the market has only widened for people hungry for actually good games. And that gap has been filled by smaller studios making smaller games. So like the $40 price tag games, for example. Those have been dominating 2024. Pal World breaking all of the records, basically. And
one of the best-selling games, I think, has ever been on Steam. One of the highest player counts that's ever been on Steam. Pal World absolutely dominated. And it was just trying to fill a gap that people were a little bit hungry for. A little hungers for it. I'm going to be honest, I haven't played Pal World, so I don't really have a ground to stand on when I say this, but from what I've seen, it's not the best game in the world. It's not technically incredible. It's not beautiful. It doesn't have every feature that you might need, but it's just filling a gap that people really want to play. And it's just fun for people to just jump in and enjoy. There's so many games that miss out on just being fun. For some reason, it's like the last thing in the book. It's like, oh, we got to make it pretty. We have to have really good advertisements. Marketing's got to be insane. We got to have live service microtransactions. We have to have ways to pull people back into the game over and over again. They forgot to make the game actually fun rather than just addictive to play.
Now, most recently, Helldivers 2 having this amazing blow up. Over 400,000 concurrent players right now for Helldivers 2, and
Helldivers 2 is doing so good that they had to cap the servers at 400,000 players because it would fall apart otherwise.
Only growing by the day. And Helldivers 2 is an amazing game. It's full of passion and fun. I think it's one of the best co-op experiences I've had since Lethal Company. And speaking of Lethal Company, that's another example to what I'm saying. Last year we saw Lethal Company come out and absolutely spank the cheeks of the gaming industry. Had it bent over their knee, disciplining them, showing them how it can be done. If you just make a fun game. It's a cheap game made by a single developer, and it took the whole industry by storm for a while, and it's still popular.
Yeah, I mean, remember Among Us? Same thing. Cheap game by a small developer, boom, blew up. Everyone was playing it.
Popular to this day. So we're seeing these games pop up that aren't blockbusters by any means. They're not $100 million production, fucking 10 years in development hell. You know, these are games made by smaller teams that just deliver unique and fun experiences. And it shows how hungry gamers are for that kind of product. I've said for a while, the future of gaming is not in more AAA titles that get more and more expensive to produce and spend more and more time in development. It's these games, these like AA games coming out that are cheaper, a lower price point, and still offering many hours worth of fun to players. And we're seeing that right now, and you're seeing how they're being rewarded with this level of success. And I think that is a...
And the AAA developers, they're getting punished. They're getting punished for their boring games. I will say, I don't know what Starfield's player count is like. I'm assuming it's doing pretty well because it's on Xbox Game Pass, but that's another issue that I have here. I used to be a massive Bethesda fan. I kind of am still a massive Bethesda fan. I used to love the way that they make games, but when Starfield came out, it was just dull. It was just boring. It was not that interesting, and it was deemed as like the biggest game for Xbox in 2023. It's going to be the big thing. It's the big boy. It's going to save them. And it came out, and it's dunked on relentlessly. But the most egregious thing that it did was just be dull. And that's the problem, is that it just wasn't very fun to play. Todd Howard himself said that it took 7 years to figure out what the fun in the game actually was. Unfortunately, it might take us another 7 years to figure out what that actually is. Maybe it's hidden somewhere. I'm not really sure.
It's a great sign for things to come. I'm hoping this will start to push developers away from just, you know, pumping out this formulaic by-the-numbers generic garbage like Suicide Squad, trying to capitalize off buzzword genres like live service nonsense, even though there's nothing in there that makes the game actually worth playing. Or most recently with Ubisoft just putting out the most bare-bones pirate game ever just to try and capitalize off that as well.
I think the problem with these big companies is the big companies are led by CEOs. They're led by, you know, the people in suits, the people at the top, the people around the round table who are like, your stock prices, yeah, shareholder value. We need to focus on that, boys. And then the little companies are mainly put together with maybe a small team of some very passionate developers that really want to make something good. They really want to make something fun. And when you're in one of if you're a cog in the machine of one of these big companies, you're still working hard and you're still passionate, but you can't choose what you want to do. You're always constrained by shareholder value. We need to make some more money. We need to get some investors in this bad boy. We need to get as much revenue and extract it from the consumer as possible. But in these smaller companies, they just think, well, we just want to make a good game. We're around here and we all study for a long time. We know what we're doing and we just want to make something freaking sweet.
I'm hoping companies will start to pay more attention to the success of these $40 games, these smaller games, and shift to that direction. Instead of spending 5 years developing a pile of mediocre garbage, why not spend a year or so developing something that's much smaller in scale, but tries to do something different that is just a fun game for maybe like 10, 15 hours even.
Okay, I mean, that's not a bad idea, like make a very small scale game. I could also say that you could make something that is smaller in budget, maybe with a smaller team, still give them the time that they need to create it, but with all the people that you have, maybe you could split your massive team up into a few smaller ones and work on projects simultaneously with smaller budgets that would all together add up to one big budget game, but instead you have a lot more smaller games. And then you have a little bit more leeway. If your game goes wrong, then you have the other 4 games that you're developing in tandem to fall back on. And you don't have to worry about, oh my god, this one game flopped. Okay, shut down the company because layoffs are going crazy in the gaming industry right now. Tens of thousands of people getting laid off because there's no money. Where's the money gone, guys? Is it because we're not making very fun games anymore, maybe?
You don't need a game that's going to keep a player hooked for like 80 hours plus by just delivering more escort missions like Suicide Squad aims to do. You can be satisfied by delivering like a $20 to $40 game that gives a player 15 hours worth of fun and they're done with it by the end. That's totally fine. You get your money's worth and that makes me excited. Now, granted, the 3 examples
Seriously, I think about Slay the Spire at least once every few days. I haven't even played Slay the Spire that much. It's just such a fun game.
Given of these massive games that are smaller teams, smaller price, Pal World, Helldivers 2, Lethal Company, those games have tons and tons and tons of hours worth of content in them for you to enjoy. But I still think there's nothing wrong if the industry shifts to making smaller games that are only like 15 hours worth of entertainment.
Oh my god, I would love it if there were more games that were shorter. Seriously, it's so hard to get through all of these games because they all want to be 50-hour, 100-hour experiences with all of these different features and things that you don't need. It would be really nice to just have a few games that you can just sit down and play for like 10, 15 hours and then it's done. And then you can remember it fondly. You don't need to have a game that you can replay 17,000 times with 150 trillion different endings. Sometimes it's nice to just have something that's really good for a short amount of time. It ends and you remember it and it was good.
As long as it's a really unique experience and it's fun to play, I think you will get your money's worth, and the price point being at that 20 to 40 range. Like the $70 price tag should be reserved for the really meaningful titles, like a GTA 6 style thing. Obviously, that's the most extreme example. But when you see a $70 price tag for something, you're expecting the highest level of quality. But right now, when you see $70 or $60, it's you could be getting the worst game of the year. Fucking Jujutsu.
I don't really mind like $60 Dilla titles because like inflation happens eventually. Eventually, something has to go up in price. It's just how the economy works, and you have to be able to fund your games somehow. But if you're going to charge that much, then it has to be at least worth your time. It has to be worth your money and your time.
Kaisen Cursed Clash is a $60 game right now, and that game is unforgivably awful. And I think it's good news that these AAA developers are not being rewarded for it. Like, again, Suicide Squad flopping, Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash, the most refunded game in history, I believe, according to one of the articles I read. Which makes sense because anyone that bought that game actually got scammed. Actually, just completely full-blown blatant scam. So it makes sense everyone would be refunded.
I did not know they even released a Jujutsu Kaisen game, I'm going to be completely honest.
And Skull and Bones looking like it's going to be a flop. All of these big budget productions that are being sold for $60 to $70 are not really turning a big profit for these companies. So I feel like they're going to start to pay a lot more attention to the smaller budget titles and the titles that they can actually do more with, because you won't need to invest years upon years of development time.
What's really going to happen is there's just going to be a bunch of people getting laid off because it'll be like, shareholder value. We've got to protect that. And our game was dog shit, so let's fire all our employees.
Do it. You instead just need to invest into a good idea and a passionate team that can deliver something fun for a reasonable price. Like, it's that simple. And we're seeing this proven time and time again now, more often now than ever. So I actually like the direction the gaming industry is going right now, because we're rewarding some of the more unique titles, the more fun titles like the Helldivers. Like, it's nice to see that.
And your Baldur's Gate 3. Sorry, I couldn't get through the video without saying Baldur's Gate 3. I'm sorry. I just love it. Sorry, Subnoodle. I apologize, guys. I just love it so much. It's okay. They love it too.
Recently, the most popular games haven't been dominated by AAA blockbusters just bullying indie titles or anything. It's actually been the smaller studios, the smaller, cheaper games that are annihilating the big boys on the block. And I just think that's great. So I'm excited to see if this trend continues throughout 2024. It's still very early. We haven't seen the biggest heavy hitters of 2024 come out yet. So I guess that remains.
Anyways, there's GTA 6. That's going to be, no matter what, that's going to be a heavyweight.
Seeing how exactly it's all going to shape up. But
GTA 6 is probably going to be the best-selling title ever.
I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it put a smile on my face seeing the success of Helldivers today. Helldivers was really like the catalyst that made me want to talk about it, because I really love everything they've done with that game, and I love to see a game like that being rewarded in the way that it is.
I've seen at least 10 TikToks about Helldivers, and I still could not tell you what that game is about. It looks like Halo 3 ODST when you get to actually play as the ODST trooper, but I really don't know what it's all about.
And I hope we see more things like it throughout the year, and just generally in the future of gaming. I really hope we can start getting away from all of these massive $100 million games that just are soulless, just cash grabs, and we get back to having more AA titles out there. I remember in the Xbox 360 era, early in the 360's lifespan, there were so many games coming out from so many different studios that just had all kinds.
Yeah, there were so, dude, the arcade section of the Xbox Live was insane. There's 7,000 different games. You've never heard of any of them before. You have no idea what they're about.
Creative ideas that they were just throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck. And sometimes you had some hidden gems, some bangers. But now,
yeah, like Uno,
in the mainstream gaming space, these giant players only invest heavily into like one or two projects and put all of their eggs in that basket. And most of the time, it's not.
Which is confusing, because you think business bigwigs would all be about like assessing risk, whereas they're just like, Nash, we gotta put all our money in one game, see? And then we gotta get a live service, and then we gotta get all the money because shareholder value.
Not turning a profit anymore, because the games just aren't really hitting. Like, some of them are, of course, obviously, but there's been so many flops recently that you just keep hearing about. It's not sustainable. You can't have every game take 6 years in development and cost 9 figures to develop. It's not going to work long term. So I really think the future is back into that $20 to $40 price range on games, smaller in scale, smaller in scope and development time, and you produce some interesting shit.
I do not disagree. Calling Skull and Bare Bones a finished game is like calling Ubisoft a competent company. I can't remember the last Ubisoft game that came out that I enjoyed. I remember playing Far Cry 5, and I was like, ooh, this is a little dull. That's tough. Ubisoft is legally obligated to publish Skull and Crossbones. They're probably trying to hype it up as to avoid legal issues as well. They said it was a quadruple A game. Here's what I think happened with Skull and Crossbones. Skull and Boring was a game that was commissioned by like the Singaporean government, so they were legally obligated to release it, and they kept reiterating on the same idea where they're like, okay, we need a pirate game that's fun. We need a pirate game that's fun. And then what must have happened is they must come to the people constantly with new prototypes, and they say, ooh, no, I don't like this one. Can we take it back to the drawing board? So I think one game had a year of development over and over and over and over and over again. We had to keep going back to the drawing board because, oh, this one's not fun, actually. And then this game that's just been released has probably been in development for like 1 or 2 years. Because it really does not reek or stink of a game that's been in development for that long. It feels like this is a game that's been done over and done over and done over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And they just have to spaff this out, because if they don't, then they have nothing to show for all of their many, many, many years of nothing, unfortunately. But hey, that's just my thoughts on the subject, and you can get some freaking gamer subs, baby. Gamer subs with code Patterrz. Hey, you can do that. Gamer subs with code Patterrz. And if you want to see more of my dumb face, then you can always subscribe here as well.